if you count, so the customer key, you'll have same customer ordering several orders, right? The transaction, the customer key can repeat, but how many unique customer keys there are, that will give you the total number of customers, right? Now, if you want active customers, right? What function can we use? We have seen this function once before. So we can use distinct count of customer key. Right? If you want to follow the best practices, then you should really use that one. Right? So this will give you how many unique customers are there right now. Okay. Now if you want our base customers, 2001 customers, okay, then we can use calculate active customers, right? We can use this measure. So calculate, what does calculate do? Calculate applies the measure formula with some filters that follow the measure formula. So here we can filter that one equal to 2001. So this will give us the number of customers in 2001. So if you divide, so growth in customers will be active customers divided by so when a measure or a name starts with a number, then you have to provide the square bracket for DAX to prompt you properly. Otherwise it thinks that it's just a number that you're using in the formula. So it's not looking for prompting you with a dimension or a field or a measure or whatever. So if you start with a square bracket, then it knows that you're looking for something and it will prompt you. All right. Okay. So now let's put it in a pivot table. Set pivot table, and let's look at let's put here, okay, and active customers. All right. So 2001 customers. See, that's going to be the same. Okay. So this and then go to customer. This shows you how. Okay, I'm going to format the growth. Should have done it. Number format. Number. Okay. Now look at this. How the calculate filter is used is very evident in this pivot table. So how is this 2001 customer calculated? Okay, remember the logic of how all calculations take place, measure calculations take place in DAX. You start with row and column index context, right? So that is going to be your starting point for what to filter. And then if it is a formula that is calculate, if it is a formula that involves any filtering, if the formula doesn't involve any filtering, you're done. You go to the table, you filter and do the calculation. But if the formula involves filtering, because there are several formulas, several functions that do additional filtering, calculate being one of them. So calculate has a calculation to be done and then some filters. So this filter that is coming from the pivot table will be modified appropriately with the filter that comes in calculate. Okay. If this calculate filter is an additional filter, it will get added to this existing context. But if it is competing, so here the context coming in is the row year number. So if it is 2002, okay, so your filter, the pivot table says filter for 2002. And then you go to calculate, calculate says filter for 2001. Okay, it is the same field that you're filtering. So if that happens, the filter that is coming from calculate takes precedence. Suppose if this had been say product category, so you're filtering for product category in pivot table, and the calculate says filter for 2001, so there is no competition here, so they both will be used, right? But if there is a conflict between what the pivot table says you should filter and the calculate says you should filter, if there is a conflict, then the calculate, the filter that is coming in from calculate, it will be used. And so what's going to happen is it will just simply ignore 2002, it will look at 2001, and that's the reason why you say 2001 customers repeated for all the filter, all the row contexts. All right. And then of course the growth divides that into that, so it's grown by 2.64 times, 9.19 times in 2003, and 2004 it's grown to 11.23 times at 2001 customers. So once again, how the calculation is done. So here is a hierarchy of how it is done. So DAX measures are evaluated against the source data. So that's the first thing. It's not, calculations do not take place at the pivot table level. It goes to the source data, and that's where the calculation will take place. DAX measures for each cell in the pivot is calculated independently. So each cell is calculated separately. So the 6 steps that are followed, so determine the pivot coordinates, the row and the column, right? And then that's going to give you the filter context for the pivot table, and then change the filter context, change the filter concept as specified or modify with what is in calculate. So this filter context that comes in from pivot table will be modified. Okay. So the modification can be either completely ignoring it and replacing it, or adding to what's coming in from the pivot table. Okay. Apply the filter coordinates to the underlying table. So filter follows table relationship. We haven't talked about that yet, so there is one more item that we will talk about later on. That's about relationships. Okay. So once that filtering takes place, and then you do the computation after that. Okay. So you need to understand what's going on in the background for understanding how this calculate works.